questions. First off, tell me, at this point, you must have screened this thing like 50 times. How many times has it been now?
I really don't know. I've actually been very selective at how many screenings, festivals we've submitted to. We've been accepted to about, I think maybe 10 of the ones that we submitted to. Yeah, we've been accepted to about 10, and some of them are a little bit further out in the future. But we've screened at, I think, 3 already, or two or three already, I think. And we've got one coming up. We got one coming up, 2 coming up in November.
Oh, nice.
That's coming up. But we won a viewer's choice in at the Reading Film Festival a few weeks back. So
cool.
that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's very, very cool. I had noticed that you had filmed in Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's a surprise to me because I would have gathered either New York or New Jersey. So what was in Pennsylvania that made it worthwhile to shoot versus one of the other locales?
I live in Shillington, PA. I'm out of Reading, Pennsylvania, in the suburbs of Reading, and I would go to New York a lot to do all of my filming and that's where everything's at. And when the COVID hit, it kind of closed everything down. So I'm sitting at home, hyper vigilant of everything that's going on in the news. And I heard someone talk about in the news about how it's perfectly acceptable to lose a few 100,000 lives in order to save the economy. And that struck a nerve. And that enabled me or motivated me to write my first script where actually I wrote it and produced it. So it was my first film that I produced. And I went from script to screen in 90 days. And it's, won a lot of awards as well, but it was my first film as a writer producer, and it was just amazing how easy it was for me to produce that here in Reading, which opened my eyes to a lot of opportunities. Reading is a really blighted city, underserved, high unemployment rate and stuff like that. But in the last year, I produced 6 film projects here in Reading. We've got one we're shooting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, that my daughter wrote and my other daughter is directing, and we're producing it. It's crazy. But to answer your question, it was just one of those things that life itself handed me this path, and I chose to take it. And it's been one incredible journey. Reading is very conducive to filmmaking. There's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm hoping to explore it more and develop it more. And I've got plans that I've been working here with the city, with the mayor and other people here to really make Reading a hub for filmmaking.
Nice, very nice. Now, was it Federico's idea or yours in terms of the casting of Kenneth Simmons? Because I like him so very much. I mean, he's got that little end part, but I was like, that's just so fitting.
I met Kenny through Federico, right?
Oh.
And we became really good friends. So it was kind of like a organic go-to put him in there as Connolly. And then I love the fact that everyone's last name is representative of their position in in the film. I mean, I think it's a fun short, and we did it great, I think, and we loved it. And Federico, really came through for us to do it. So.
Well, and not only that, it's a combination not only of the acting portion, but as we all know, the writing portion. There's so many little cute lines that are in there. And the one this time that caught me, and it did before too, was the whole fantasizing about my wife, 30 years, all that good stuff. I'm like, how does this guy come up with this stuff? Because honestly, that takes some very clever thinking to come up with these almost like one-liners over and over and over and over again, put together as a script. So when you were putting this together, how do you come up with that? Because that's just genius. I'm like, that's just too funny,
Well, here's the thing, and I want to go back now several years ago. I am a frustrated comic, right? And I actually tried doing stand-up comedy, and I have a whole bunch of material. And when I started writing, or when I wrote the whole skit originally was just going to be the stakeout between the two arguing about the best mob movie. But when Federico decided that I need to expand on it, so I started putting what else can they be talking about and stuff like that. And that's where I started putting a little bit of these pieces in there that I've already had from some of my comedy skits that I've had in my head that I never used. And I just pull from all these different experiences, and I just put them in there. You know?
Oh, funny. Well, and then the other thing is, and Federico would be better to answer this, but he's not here. So I guess I'll ask you and see if you can answer it. What's interesting to me is how on tune they both are, meaning when they have that segment where, where he's like, take the gun and the cannoli and all that, the facial expressions, they just get more and more tense. It's building and building and building. So I was curious to ask if that was just, did they play this out before they did it? Was it more of an improv situation? Do you know how that came about?
Well, for me, because I didn't rehearse any of this with Federico, we shot it. I'm sure he rehearsed it on his own to be ready, because he came prepared. The way he expressed it to me is that he wanted that frustration of him, the character, being really irked by the fact that this guy thinks Scarface is really better than the guy. Right. So there's that moment where he's looking around and doing like that. And he's still, it's still simmering. It's like it's boiling up inside. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he just says quotes, right? So it's like I forgot all about it. We just had a little argument and stuff. It's over. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm looking through, or my character's looking through the binoculars. And then all of a sudden, he just couldn't take it anymore. He still needs to bring that argument in. So he created all that part of that. It was very, very. He brought the words that I put on paper to life, and it was easy for me to feed off of that. Sure. Because, as they say, acting is reacting. So when he goes out there and he brings that to the forefront, then I just have to react to it. And it was real. It was raw. So.
Oh, I believe that. He's so good in that role in particular, where it's just so deadpan, where you just look over and he's just like, just matter of fact, just like this. And I'm like, that's so different from some of the other characters when you look at him. I've seen him play a priest repeatedly. I've seen him do these very subdued. Well, Furio wasn't subdued, but you know what I mean? It's a sign of a good actor. And not to mention the fact the storyboards are as brilliant as his acting is. And he's a great director. I don't think people really realize they just see actor or artist, but they forget he's capable of doing directing, which I wish they wouldn't do. He's really very, very talented in all three areas.
Well, I gotta add something. He's all around real. He's an artist for sure. A couple of things. I've seen him one day where we were joking about Shakespeare, and he went up and he just did a whole. I mean, people don't understand. He's theater. His background is theater too, right. And he did this incredible monologue, Shakespearean monologue. I was like, wow, it's just amazing. He's an artist. He's got an eye for details. So when he directs, he brings that to the table. But one thing that the people don't know, and if you get a chance to talk to him, he's a blues harmonic player too. And
oh my God, I did not know that.
He blew my mind. Such hidden talent that he just does. I can't say enough, but it just blew my mind. He plays the blues harmonica like a professional. He can start a band.
It's like there's nothing he can't do.
I don't know.
He's just so multifaceted. It's like, oh my God, it's a mega talent. And Robert, if you ever get a chance, you up there get a chance to meet him, I have to tell you, he's probably I've said this, he's the most gracious individual. You wouldn't even think that he was a star. I mean, you literally would think you were the regular guy acting like a regular person all of the time. He's extremely gracious, very well-mannered, extremely professional. He really, you can see we're in the fan club here. So I guess the only other question I have for you, Robert, is when it comes to, obviously in the beginning, you see them dumping the stuff in the car and all that good jazz and stuff. I like to talk to actors about research, meaning did you have to dig in or how accurate did you want that component of it to be? Because it's kind of obvious when you're in the car, but was that important to you to emphasize that?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't write any of that in the script. That was all Federico. When Federico did his storyboards, and those little details that he forethought that he put in there that created that I had to go back. This other little hand thing where we did the radio, we're turning off the radio and get at the very beginning. He did the storyboard, but we didn't shoot it that night, so we had to come back the week later and go same location, same time. He wanted to have that little detail of turning off the radio, have a little radio, because that's what happens inside a police car. All those little details really count.
You bet. Now, Mr. Pandemic Artist, what did you think of the film?
I thought it was great. I loved it. Maybe because I lived in Lower Manhattan in the 70s, I felt like I knew, both you guys. In fact, I still feel like I do. I love the because I love both those movies. I thought the script was great. It was the movie wasn't trying to be something that it wasn't. It was simple. It was straight. I love the simplicity of it. I really enjoyed it. And it dawns on me watching it that I enjoyed watching yours more than mine because I've seen mine, 150 times. I go, oh, a new film, thank God. But I thought it was terrific. I loved it. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, thank you. Well, vice versa. When I saw your film, it
Yeah.
connected with me. It connected with me because it's very relevant to my experience again, because it's during that pandemic, and I was really amazed at your film at not the simplicity, because although it was a simple
Yeah.
premise, the complexity of it all, because at time I laughed, I felt the time element in there. I felt all the different nuances of what transpired there in creating the artwork and watching that timeline go by with the actual news voiceovers going, the off-screen voiceovers of the news carrying on of what's going on in real time, while the artist in you is out there creating, and then those questions that am I too old? All these little details that really brings that little story to life. And I love the fact that it was minimal in its dialogue, and I think that is a true art, when you can express and convey emotion and convey a story with limited vocalization, and I really love that.
Everything, the whole film, I've done 5 films. I'm 75 years old. I started doing this 5 years ago. I made films before, but they were for clients in documentaries and stuff. Everything that I do is based on limitations, as in part for all of us, but I don't know how to do sound. So I can't do sound. I can only pick up whatever I pick up off of the camera. And so I'm a writer, so the graphic kind of thing comes naturally to me. And the idea of the pandemic was sort of a savior to me, because I don't want to work with anybody anyway. I don't want to coordinate. I don't want to do logistics. I've done that all my life with everybody. I mean, I live 20 miles outside of Albuquerque, a village in New Mexico, and that's fine. So for me, this kind of a movie was a natural, and the pandemic was almost an excuse to do something that I just normally do. I made 4 or 5 films like this, but the pandemic was an excuse to stay at home.
Let me ask you a question. I love also the choice of music that you had in there. How did you come about with the decision, to say I'm going to use this music in this format?
I fall in love with pieces of music, and then I incorporate them in different ways, and they take on different meanings. But I'm so familiar with the music by the time I get to making this film that it's just like an actor you've worked with 4 or 5 times. And I'm looking for music because I'm so limited in there's no actors but me, there's nothing. I have to make it work by being able to cut on a beat to keep it moving along. So I look for music that either has a beat to it or has something to it that'll carry it.
I think you hit it spot on with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that music was in 3 other films, and it's kind of like, this is life, so goes life, life goes on kind of music. And I'm kind of obsessed with the idea of art, of the artist, the mythic artist, the purist, the artist, and always wanted to be one, but ended up, making a living and working in advertising and stuff. I loved it, but so I figured at the age of 70, I could go back to where I was when I was 23 in Lower Manhattan and try to be the artist I wanted to be. I just like the shapes, and I looked to make after I collect all this stuff with me playing as stunts with these black doors, I said, well, how do I make a movie of this? And it just came together as a movie, but I didn't script it. I didn't plan it out. I just went for things that I liked, like black doors, the music, things like that. And I'll tell you, I felt like I had the experience. So I read a lot about artists and, whoever they are, and whether it's Warhol or Rothko or whatever. But I felt like in making this, and in other stuff that I do in this way, I have the experience of being a painter artist who doesn't know where he's going and paints over. And then,
Right.
And it was very satisfying.
First question I want to ask is, how you have those artists that you, at the very end of the segment, the various artists that you pick out to spotlight in there, what made you choose those in particular? That just kind of stood out to me.
I wanted diversity, and I wanted older people. I wanted people who had done something in their 80s or 90s for the most part.
Excellent choice, I might add, because that's neat. I don't get a chance to see that very often. Just like I love your usage of sound effects, you know what I mean? At the right exact, you just get it spot on, especially with the reels.
I work with what I got. That's the bottom line. If I pick up on something with the camera and it's usable and it's good and it works, I use it. I do not really struggle with things that I'm not good at, like sound or certain lighting or things like that. I just try to keep it as simple as possible. I shoot an awful lot. And when you shoot an awful lot, you get 10% that's usable and 5% that's great. And you only use that stuff.
Sure.
So I'm not struggling too hard for things because I'm through with that.
That is such a wonderful attitude.
I'm
75 and I'm just done with a lot of this. and look at what he produces out of it.
I'm looking for things that I'm looking to draw connections and be observant, which is something age is good for, about things that'll work. You just watch something and you that's what age teaches you what works. I'm sure you appreciate that too. You see it when you know it.
Yes, absolutely. I was curious why you chose the on-screen narration, because I was like, I wonder how this would have worked if you would have been narrating it yourself. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes creators will do that. They'll be in it and then they'll narrate it, or they'll tape the narration separately of themselves. So why the on-screen narration?
You mean the news clip?
Yeah.
I had it because I've since Trump got into office, I've been shooting nightly news all the time. I don't know why, but I just can't watch it without shooting it.
Okay.
So with the pandemic, here is something. So I sit there, I got the camera and I shoot this stuff, and I have the sound off the video, and I had it. And because in advertising, I did a lot of radio commercials back in the day. It was familiar to me how to edit sound. So again, it was simple, it was there.
Okay. Now, the lovely lady that we see in the film, I'm guessing, is your wife.
Yes.
Did you approach her, or did she just automatically say, sure, honey, I'd love to be part of this short film?
Well, I shoot so much that it's not uncommon for me just to be shooting anything. So she may not necessarily know if it's in the, but there was no, and some of the stuff where she appears in the film is just stuff that I've shot, and I'm not setting it up as a shoot.
I got it. Okay.
But in the film, there are a couple of things I set up. We're just watching television. You sit here. I'm going to get up because I can't watch. I'm going to go out and make art. You said, well, then I seem to be. I'm. What happens to me? Why am I sitting here watching TV while you're going out? I can't explain. Just do it.
It's just priceless. It is. And just the idea of you filming all of the time, of course. Now, there are some of the judges that looked at this film and said to themselves, well, is he trying to project the idea that with the world kind of crumbling with the pandemic and all sorts of other things going on, I'm creating beautiful things? Or does it come down to a matter of, are you searching for art, or are you searching for the artist within? So there's a couple different themes going on, but as the creator, are we completely off, or is that two versions of many? As far as
I guess that's two versions of many. I wanted to address, how can we make what is the deal with trying to make art when the people are suffering, the world is falling apart, there's chaos going on? What gives us the right to be trying to create our little movies? I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that it's hard to be focused, self-focused on one thing when the world is falling apart. On the other hand, focusing on one thing can save you. That was probably the main theme. I was making art to save myself from having to deal with the rest of the world.
Of course.
Yeah.
There was a filmmaker question that someone had asked about. What made you want to use slow motion? I feel like that was a nice add-on that maybe you didn't need, but excellent choice.
I'm thinking now, I'm trying to remember where the slow motion
Was that from, there's a couple different times, I believe, when you're walking from one door to another, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. I thought
Yeah.
one time from
You're
outside the
right.
house.
Wow, you watch very carefully. You're right. And
That's my job.
Yeah, it's slowed. Yes. It's slowed enough to coordinate with the music
Mhm.
or to make the transition, to soften the transition. Like when he said up, maybe I'm too old to be an artist. And I was a motion where I just am picking up a dish, which corresponded to the Picasso shot that followed it. It just seemed to work. It needed something that wasn't exactly real time. The script is the music, so I'm cutting to the music, and if the music calls for it to be slower, I got to follow that.
Makes perfect sense. How would you encourage someone of any age to be able to have the courage to say, it doesn't matter how old I am, I can do this?
I think when I was, 30, 40, 50 even, or when I was in my 30s working on Madison Avenue, my mind was producing different kinds of, it was quicker. It was definitely sharper. It was definitely quicker. No doubt about it. Now, I think the older mind sees more of a gestalt. It sees a whole thing, not these, and it's not so incisive, but it sees where parts fit together easier. And therefore, it doesn't have to work as hard because it's familiar with the elements, and it knows instinctively, the older mind, I think, knows instinctively how things will progress, how it'll work, how this will happen. It's a lot more confident because you've done, it's not as sharp and kinetic, but you save a lot of time.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Before I forget to ask, how well has this particular movie done thus far?
So I've made 5 films in my post-career career, and this has been the most successful. And it's been in so far it's like 15 festivals, and they're all sound like just wonderful festivals. And one of the reasons I do these is to go to the festivals, and I don't go to all of them, but I can tell where there's a good one, and that's why. And it's to meet the filmmakers and to see the films live.
Sure.
And I so miss that. This Zoom session has been the closest I've come to that. I really mean that.
Oh my
And
goodness, look at that.
as simple as it is, just meeting Robert, it's made it worth it. I'm serious because that's why I do this stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Robert, nice meeting you. Great meeting you, man.
Great film. I know you from forever.
This is too cool. Awesome.
Yeah,
All right, guys. See ya.